Hello, I'm Dhanya Rajendran. Today, joining me in the studio are three of my colleagues who are sitting as if they are students in a classroom, but they aren't. That's Anisha Sheth, Karnataka Bureau Chief of the News Minute, Shivani Kava, Senior Reporter at the Karnataka Bureau, and Nandini Chandrashekar, Associate Editor. The three of them are here today because they've just won the Laadli Award for Gender Sensitive Reporting for their coverage of the Prajwal Revanna tapes and the rape cases against him. Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's one of those stories for which you're not exactly happy also getting an award, right? Because you wish that it
This had never
hadn't.
happened.
Yeah, it hadn't happened at all. So we're just here to discuss the journalism that went behind these stories and why this series won the award. Remember, this was a story which was covered by every single media organization in the country and even global media organizations. It happened just before the Lok Sabha elections. The tapes or the CDs which these clips had finally emerged and cases were filed against Prajwal Revanna. He fled to Germany at that time. He came back. There was a dramatic arrest. So this is not a story that only the News Minute covered. So why did this coverage stand out? Because Nandini, Anisha, and Shivani did not treat it like any other crime story, where a reporter will look at what is the crime, who is the accused, the perpetrator, and who is the victim, what does the victim family say, what did the police say. But they went into multiple nuances of how this played out on the ground. For example, they looked at the caste, the privilege, the power question. Now you may ask, how does caste matter here? It does matter. In Hassan, Mandya, and the regions where the Revanna family, Prajwal Revanna and his family are very powerful, their privileges of caste, power, and politics had actually shielded them for a long time. They also had to speak to survivors who by then were very skeptical of media coverage. Survivors and families were not in talking to the media a lot because by then it was being called a sex scandal, it was being called karma in most Kannada media, and a lot of people were insinuating that the women were active participants in what happened, that the sex was consensual. So to gather their trust, to make them speak, was not a simple thing for these reporters to do. We also looked at how these clips spread throughout these districts and people were confused as to how to look at them, including young people. So I'm going to make them explain the stories. But before we go to that, I hope that this video will shed some light on how journalism works, not just for people who aspire to be journalists, but for others too, and why it does make a difference when women report on things which are related to women. That's a huge factor here. So, Anisha, tell me, we could have done this like any other crime story, right? But we decided to go there, stay there for many days, talk to different kinds of people, and do the story. Before I go to Anisha, I must thank the subscribers of the News Minute because without their contributions, we wouldn't have been able to manage to go, stay back for so many days, and do that kind of in depth work. But why did you all decide to not cover it like a normal crime story?
Because it wasn't a quote unquote normal crime. I mean, I don't like classifying sexual assault or any kind of crime for that matter. But I think we can all agree that this was not this was something we'd never seen before. We kept hearing about, some politician being accused of sexual assault and lots of sexually explicit clippings floating around on social media. And
I think
then,
initially it was not even said sexual assault, it was said sex scandal.
yeah, initially it was sex scandal, and then slowly we started to realize that this is something that we had never seen before. Let's remember who Prajwal Revanna is. He comes from a family where 8 members, including himself, have held public office, elected public office. And his grandfather, H.D. Devegowda, was a former prime minister. That district is practically a fiefdom of that family where they can do anything and nobody will say a word because they're just too scared. This is the kind of man who is being accused of sexual assault. So we have to remember that he had an unusual amount of power, even for a politician, in that particular place. And he was accused of sexually assaulting dozens of women. Only 5 of them came forward to file complaints. That's a different matter. But this is the kind of assault that we are talking about. And what was the impact of it in the place where he was living, right? Practically everybody had watched the videos. They're spreading like wildfire on social media. So everybody practically was carrying around these clippings and pictures and all of that stuff in their pockets. And people of all age groups. And we are also talking about little kids here, like, high school kids, and parents don't know whether what to do because they suspect that their kids might have watched it. But how do you broach the subject of this kind of stuff when, even something like as remote as harmless as kissing, consensually, of course, is considered a taboo among, parents and as a subject, when they
So
talk
you
to their
decided
kids.
that you have to be on the ground to talk to these people because it is not just about the crime, it's about the people who live there too.
Exactly. Everybody was watching those videos. I mean, we just know how, I don't like using this word either, but I think it's the most accurate. Many large parts of our society are actually depraved when it comes to sexual content and sexual well being, right? There is no healthy outlet for anybody to even discuss the subject. So nobody knows how to deal with it. And then when something like this happens, just imagine the kind of impact it's going to have on a wider society that considers sex as immoral, bad, and God knows what else.
Hmm. But what she was saying, Shivani, about the fact that this was his fiefdom, that's one of the first obstacles you all faced, if I remember correctly, that people were just not ready to speak about the video itself. Not the victims, but general
Just the video.
public.
I mean, I remember like the first reporting assignment was we headed to Hole Narsipura, Anisha and I, and we remember like just not even with the cameras, we were just going approaching them, trying to talk to them about what had happened, and none of them wanted to talk to us. And the ones that actually we managed to talk to, one of the students, I remember, we had taken her bite and we were heading back to Bangalore when she found my Instagram and she DM'd me asking me to please can you not include my video because I'm studying in the colleges built by the Revanna family and it will actually cause me problems. So initial obstacle was like nobody was willing to talk, and our story, the first story that we did, the video story, talked about just that, like how powerful Hole Narsipura, like how powerful this family is in Hole Narsipura and how nobody is willing to talk to us.
I'll just make a quick point here. Hole Narsipura is a town of about 10,000, 15,000 people. And given how strong it's a Vokalika dominated area, these are small towns, small villages. Everybody knows everybody over there. There is very little you can do or say without somebody, some of your neighbors finding out about it, or your family ending up finding out about it, right? So that is why this fear exists.
Now, then you just run me through the different stories that you all did during that time.
Yeah, so the first thing, as Shivani mentioned, was going on the ground in Hole Narsipura because we really wanted to get an idea about what people were thinking faced with such a deluge of these video clips. We wrote about how people lived in fear. Like it was mentioned, this was a very politically dominant, economically dominant, caste dominant family which had exercised such an iron control. People didn't want to say anything bad because they were so scared. We came back, we wrote about it, we went back again, went back to Hassan this time. And we saw the same reaction that people were very scared to talk. They were realizing the magnitude of it. They were not happy about it, but they're still very scared to talk about it. It was then that we met some women activists who had started to fight. So they began to speak. They helped us a bit. Local journalists also helped us reach. So we wrote about what the prevailing feeling in Hassan was. At the same time, we also saw that it was affecting a younger generation. We visited schools and colleges, spoke to parents, spoke to college students, and we wrote about what they were thinking. So that was one of the angles that we covered because there was so much horror. They were terrified. Some kids had watched it inadvertently. They couldn't decipher, didn't know what to make of it. They were traumatized. So while we were writing this story, we also realized that media coverage had gone on overdrive. Clearly, something so salacious will draw a lot of attention. The way it was being shown, the way it was being framed, the way the narrative was entirely, it was very against the victim. It showed Prajwal in what could this man do? I mean, this a man being a man kind of a thing. It was called sex scandal in the beginning, as we mentioned.
No, even now, a lot of people
Yeah,
call it sex
it's a
scandal. It just
scandal.
angers me when I see that.
And then it said a man stuck by kama, which means lust in Kannada. And there were very choicy terms
Yeah.
used.
Kamanda,
Nothing to show.
Kamalile,
Kamalile.
Rasalile.
Nothing to show that they were thinking on behalf of the victim, giving a voice to the victim, really. Uh, so we wanted to say that this is not exactly how it should be seen. We also criticized the media. We wrote a story on that. And ultimately, we realized we wanted to show why it was possible for a Prajwal Revanna to do what he did over a long stretch of time. And this had been going on for at least 6, 7, 8 years. This did not happen overnight. This was not a matter of a year or two. So, what allowed him, the impunity that allowed him to go on as he did? So, we wrote about his political career, his family, why they had why it is such a stronghold for the JDS, the Devegowda family, and why he was able to get away with it unnoticed.
So, one big problem that we normally face while reporting on sexual violence is in making the survivor speak to us, right? Now, over the years, I've realized that we shouldn't make the survivor over talk, because sometimes some things that they tell us can be used in court, or their memory is hazy. They may remember things differently at different points of time, and we don't want that to become an obstacle. And in this case, the survivors were very wary of the media, considering the coverage that had gone on till now, till then, right? Like I had spoken to Nidhi a few weeks ago about her story on Bishop Franco, or former Bishop Franco, and the nun that he was accused of raping. That nun hasn't spoken up in years. This was the first time that she spoke, and it took Nidhi almost 6 to 8 months of continuously traveling back and forth from Delhi to Kerala to just sit down with her and sort of win her trust, saying that I will tell your story properly, right? For you all, that kind of time wasn't there then. There were people who were sporadically talking to survivors. There was one more English media, I think, which had done that at that time. So winning over their trust. Also, we are an English media house. We are not Kannada, because they are watching Kannada. As a reporter, as a journalist, how do you then make sure that they trust you enough just with the phone conversation to speak to you?
Knowing the local language helps, definitely. It was, we also made sure that these people were not sandbagged by our appearance. We just didn't. We took the help of mutual acquaintances to initially talk to them, see that this is where we are coming from, this is what we are going to be talking about, and only if they were agreeable to it. There was no question of force, because we did come across victims whom we knew. In one case, I did not go ahead with an interview because the girl was too young and she was so distraught. I thought it was not worth it traumatizing her further, because by then we had also heard that some women had attempted suicide. They were in a very fragile state. Some of them had left their homes. So they were in a very vulnerable situation. So the ones we spoke to, we made sure that they knew where we were coming from, what we are going to write about. They had some demands, like they asked us not to record the conversations, which we complied with.
But that's a luxury I would never have had in a TV channel, for example.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
what is the position of the victim? Should we not interview? Is never a question. Yeah.
So it is indeed a luxury. One person was so cautious, they asked us not to record it. I didn't record the conversation. But I did say, this is going to be a long conversation. If you don't even make notes, because she did not want us to make notes either. But at some point, we had to cater. Then finally said, okay, this is what we are going to say. And when our story got published, I did send it back to them saying, okay, this is how it has appeared. So we had a very short amount of time to gain, but we were lucky because we did take a lot of help from the local people to gather that trust. Otherwise, coming from outside, which in journalism we say parachuting, it's said very sarcastically, when we are coming from some other place and trying to do it. It really helped us that we knew local people who would help us establish some kind of rapport with the victims.
Okay, I'll put Shivani in the hot seat now. Shivani, you're younger compared to the people on your on either side.
Properly sandwiched in between both
Yeah,
of us.
properly sandwiched in between. It was the first time. I mean, it was the first time for all of us that we were dealing with something at this scale. But at least Anisha and Nandini have had more reporting experiences where they have spoken to people who are victims and traumatized. I remember that for you, initially, it was very, very overwhelming, right?
Yeah. So it helped that I had like two women report editors who are actually like practically they are also my editors. That helped. And I remember calling you once. Anisha had gone to speak to the parents, and I was waiting in the car just after speaking to the young people and what they had told me. Because I was so overwhelmed. I think I had also like I was crying when I was talking to you. So it is just coming back to me right now. But it was overwhelming, but also it just because I was doing it for the first time, and the lack of vocabulary about how you are supposed to like approach this, how you're supposed to talk to the people. Like I remember we went to talk to the families, and we had to find their houses, right? And what do you ask the people? Like if you have an address, you ask them, like you do you know where this person's house is? But you only know the first name or the family name of this person, and just to navigate how to find their houses, especially like the Mysore house, the kind of language we have to use to locate their house, and then finally meeting them. And I think it was around 11 o'clock when we went to their house. The woman was kidnapped by that time, and the son was with the police trying to
11
get
in
the.
the night.
Yes, it was 11 in
Yeah,
the
around
night.
10:30, 11, I think
Yeah.
we reached.
So they were also like the women initially were very hesitant to talk to us until like the men of the family came, and then we had to explain it to them like, listen, this is why we are here, and we are gonna, and we're not gonna report it in a very bad way, and like we don't even have to report what you're saying. Can you just have a conversation with us? So it took just like enough amount of time for us to convince them to just to talk to us and share their contact number for us to like come back and follow up with them. And even talking to the cops, thankfully I think in this case they were very sensitive, because I've seen like in other cases cops are very desensitized, and they make fun of like, hey, look at what is happening in our state and everything. But thankfully in this case they were very much sensitive when we went and talked to them. But coming back to like how this whole reporting was, like when it was happening, it might have not affected as much, because like we had to like speak to a lot of people, and like there was not enough time to process. But by the end of it, like by the end of our third story came out, and we were heading back to Bangalore, all three of us. I remember having a conversation with all of three of us and just discussing like what had happened, and like the crime that had happened, and the circulation of videos, because that is something I followed up religiously, because as somebody who's constantly on social media, it was the first time that I had seen where videos were like, there were teasers of these sexual assault videos put on Instagram, and most often it would be the public officials who were assaulted by him, and but did not come forward. And the comment section of this would be like, you know what, this was all consensual, it was quid pro quo, and there's nothing wrong. And there were like really bad words used to describe these women. And then the teaser would go to Telegram, which we have included in our story as well, like how these videos were sold on Telegram back in the day. And then the young people that we spoke to, especially the men that Anisha spoke to, said like how most of the men view that as pornography. And the young girls that we spoke to said like these were 21-year-old girls in college, and they told us, that is specifically something that stays with me, and I think every time I discuss the story I make sure I make it a point to say, was they did not know how to view marriage as, because for them you marry somebody for reproduction, and that is what sex means for them. And when something like this was happening, when somebody is having forcing you into this, and they did not know, and someone like the girl was like, I don't want to get married, and at that point I did not know what to say. Yeah.
So, like, one thing I want to add to what Shivani was saying is that, see, when you watch these videos, it isn't always very clear that whether or not this is assault or consent, right? It's not always clear, and it's not always easy to figure out from a video, right? And that, I think, is what had probably disturbed these young people a lot. See, because they are young, inexperienced, and they don't probably have the maturity or whatever to understand. Some of them might not. I'm not saying everybody. But it wasn't always clear. And that's why these videos are so dangerous, because they've spread like wildfire in a society that does not understand or even acknowledge that sex should be consensual. right? So then it is not surprising that young people, especially young girls, young women, would equate this kind of behavior to marriage, right? Because then they would also possibly draw the conclusion that they might also be subjected to something like this. And they just horribly unprepared to deal with this kind of reality.
I want to just go on a very different tangent now. But before I um, go to that segment, I just want to remind my audiences and thank them for being part of this coverage, even while we were doing these stories. So many of you wrote to us, tweeted to us, told us that please do this story or please do that story. So it's that kind of feedback which also keeps us going. So thank you for that. Now, one big problem with this Prajwal Revanna story, as I see as an editor.
Only one?
No, as in one big problem of the coverage of the story, as I see it, was that it was easy to go into that rabbit hole where you politicize the entire thing because this was happening at the eve of election, right? And a lot of people were only focusing on the fact that the JDS was an ally of the BJP. And I think Narendra Modi had appeared on stage with Prajwal Revanna or something, even after the rumor of the tape had started. I can't remember exactly, but there were lots of political stuff happening. Always editorially, we do take a tough position against the BJP. There is no doubt about that, against Hindutva, against all these things. But even then, I feel that we were able to look at this crime and its politics, but not politicize it for elections' sake, right? Nandini, you want to add on that?
Yes, BJP was allying with JDS for the Lok Sabha elections, but I would have to say unequivocal, yes, we would go after them regardless of what party they were in, because it was the nature of the crime that was so terrible. And like I wanted to say this earlier, yes, because it took on such a bad political hue exactly because it was on the eve of election, on the eve of voting. But the fact is, it was so, it was hard 2 days after voting. I mean, what are you going to talk about? There is going to be no more political angle to it. The crime remains. What are you going to do about it? You can't ignore it. But it did happen, and one of the reasons that spurred us to do better on these stories was also the way it was politicized.
Yeah. No, in fact, what Nandini is saying is that the voting had completed by the time this caught on. So a lot of people are like, oh, now you won't cover this story because voting is over. Now you don't care. But we actually started much more vigorously.
Proper reportage after that.
Yeah, after that, yeah.
Because that is when we got to really know the extent of it. If we remember, voting was on April 26th, and he left for Germany on that night itself. Nobody even realized that he had quietly left. He finished his voting, he quietly left for Bangalore, and that's it. He was out. And then he took a month for him to come back and surrender. I mean, for him to be arrested, right? More than a month. So there was a lot of attempt even in television coverage to politicize it. And that is what it looked. Okay, it was a Congress conspiracy because they were trying to bring down. There was even fingers pointed out with, against BJP as well. It didn't matter. It didn't matter. In fact, there is a case now on the political front. There is still a case remaining about people who have circulated the videos.
That was one story that you all did, right? About how that footage was, like there were these USBs with the footage which were kept at bus stands.
Yeah, that was a story. And then I remember going around, every single person I spoke to, I would ask, okay, where did you see these tapes? Where did you see these, pen drives? Where? Like I wanted to find somebody who'd seen the damn pen drives, because that was a story that was being spread around, right? And ultimately
we did realize is that there were not as many pen drives as they said. A lot of it was sent to each other on WhatsApp, on Telegram. That was how it spread. But there was some number of USBs actually were distributed, but not, they said, okay, hundreds, thousands and stuff. That was not the case.
But one thing is clear, this did happen because it was election time. That the tapes were spread because somebody, let's say even both the Congress and Prajwal Revanna's rivals in the BJP and JDS itself, and the women were just the scapegoats.
Scapegoat is because the talk about this had started the previous year. Lawyer Devrajay Gowda in Holenarsipura, he had spoken about the fact that he had it. Then he objected. He wrote to BJP saying that you cannot have Prajwal Revanna contesting because these are allegations. But they were still under wraps. That was not very clear. Nobody again knew. Like one of the party workers told me, right, when they heard, that was just a day or two before voting, they said, okay, there are these videos circulating. They still hadn't seen them. They thought it was a video of his, Prajwal Revanna had apparently a girlfriend, and they thought, okay, it must be that video. So they didn't bother. I said, hurray, so what?
No, I'm saying that the BJP had to be questioned here. The JDS had to be questioned because there were enough hints way before the election itself that Prajwal Revanna was up to something not good, but they never acted on it. But for us as journalists, it also as political journalists, it was very easy to get lost in the politics, right?
Correct.
And not focus on the women or the social and moral questions around it. Now, finally, what are your learnings from the story? And you've got an award also for that reporting. So tell me, what are your learnings from that story? And I know that all of us, at least me, Anisha, Shivani, we've all kept in touch with the survivors. And they too are having quite a tough life. It's not like things are easy for them, even now. Many of them cannot go back to their villages. They're figuring out their jobs. But what has your learning been?
There is no either or situation, right? We were just talking about the coverage. We covered the political part of it. We covered the victim side of it. It can be done and it should be done. And in journalism, we say follow-up is very important. This is often ignored aspect of journalism. You cover the breaking, you're there, and then you just forget about it. In this way, I'm very proud of the three of us, if I say so myself, that we did not give up. We were there in Hassan, we spoke to the people, we kept up, we went at it. And really, when the conviction happened in the first case, that it was a victory of sorts for us as well. Because we felt we did justice by following it so thoroughly, covering all voices, covering all aspects of it. It pays. It is rewarding to see. It should have never happened, yes. But I hope we have, in a small part, offered some solace to the victims. We did some justice by them. So,
I don't know. I mean, this question is kind of a zinger for me. Like, I think I don't have learnings per se. I don't know, but at this point, I'm just thinking that these women still are so powerless, right? And they took on the most powerful man in their hometowns, somebody with the legacy of having a grandfather who is a former prime minister. And I am just humbled, absolutely, by how much courage that takes, and to stick it out. I mean, they were called liars in court. They are in some random place in Bangalore away from their homes for more than a year now. And they still stuck to their guns and got him convicted.
And remember, this is not the end of it. It is
this
only
is not,
one
yeah,
conviction.
Yeah, this is one conviction which is now in the High Court
in a
being
lower
challenged.
court, that too, and that is going to be challenged in the High Court.
Yeah.
Like reading the judgment, I can guess like 5 different aspects on which it is going to be challenged very strongly, and the next cases are coming up. So this is not the end of it at all. Yeah, Shivani?
I think as a young reporter, firstly, I'm grateful for the opportunity because I could see a lot of my contemporaries in different media organizations who would have wanted to do reporting on this, but they weren't given that opportunity. So, the opportunity to just report on it.
Are you really that young anymore? Because I feel like you've been around for a long time.
I was 24 at that time. I'm 26 now. So even now, like even as a 26-year-old, I don't think in a legacy media organization you would be allowed to report on a story like this. So firstly,
I was told as well.
Right. So the opportunity just that I get to work on stories like this and to learning, there are so many, starting from how to speak to survivors, the kind of language, just to be patient about it and not to hurry. Because I think I was a breaking news person, desk person at TNM. So from that, I became a reporter. So
I never break the news.
Yeah, like sometimes you have to like sit with the information that you have and like articulate how this can harm the survivor, and like, you know, what information that you have to withhold. So that also becomes important, right? Like that is one of the learnings. And um give me some time. I had too many things in my mind now.
No, that's fine. No, I just want to say one more thing that do you all remember? I think Anisha especially, and Nandini also. There was one woman who wasn't ready to complain, and we sort of like
Went
we
on a, oh my god,
yeah,
yes.
we tried to really
yes.
like reach out to her family
Yeah.
to figure out whether
I followed it through. She went.
Oh, yeah. But can we say that
yeah,
publicly?
take out
Like, I
video.
don't
yeah,
know.
no,
Ah,
that's
okay.
fine. No, there were only few videos where it was very evident that it was assault, right? In the others, there could be power dynamics, which is very difficult to
Which would not
prove
be,
in a court.
yeah.
But this was a proper assault video, but the woman wasn't ready to complain, and we really tried to talk to the family.
Literally from stakeouts. We
How
had
many times,
stakeouts,
how
we
many of us?
tracked,
You, me, Sudipto, Shivani,
and,
all four of us, and
uh,
Danya also. The first time Danya and I went, oh my god, 5 of us going wandering around that area
wandering
trying to find that
around.
address.
Then
Yeah.
finally tracking down, we finally got somebody to enter the complex where we knew that she was being held, but by then we heard that she had already left that place, and
Yeah, we heard that she had been kidnapped.
yeah.
Also, yeah.
So that is why all the stakeout and trying to enter the complex and the particular apartment where she was supposedly being held. But eventually she did, the family, she and her husband both were reluctant to talk about it, and they refused to file a complaint. So at that point, we just let it be. But we did manage to track the family down. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess that's all. And congratulations again for winning the award. For everyone who listened, watched this episode of basically nothing, right? It's not an episode of any show, but
No.
yeah, who watched this show, make sure that you subscribe to the News Minute and News Laundry. This is not just, like a random request we make each time. It really matters to us because every time you take a subscription, which is just worth 500 rupees for you, let's say 10 people take it, it allows an Anisha to just go to Mandya and come back. That's all it takes to go, come back, stay maybe a day. So it really, really is very important to us because if the public pays for the media, then the public gets served. Journalism should be free as much as possible from all kinds of external influences. And to do that, it's possible only if you pay for that journalism. So thank you very much for supporting us all this while. But don't stop at just liking the video or commenting. If you can afford it, do take a subscription or contribute to the reporting fund. Thank you very much. Congratulations.
Can I add
again.
one thing here?
Yes.
Yeah. So, most sexual assault stories get covered when the news breaks and then we forget about it. We are also guilty of that. But we would like to, I at least would like to follow up on more ordinary women who are being sexually assaulted and finding out whether they are alleged attackers, are held accountable or not. So this is my personal appeal to everybody to please subscribe and to contribute to our reporting fund, whichever you can manage, so that we can continue to do more work like this.
First time Anisha is doing the CTA. For that itself,
Yes.
you should subscribe. Yeah. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, Danya.